Lapid Leaders Africa is a non-profit organization whose mission is to ignite the prowess of the next generation of African leaders and empower them to reimagine the possible, equip the youth with the skills, the mindset, the networks, the experiences that they need to be able to be transformational leaders within the marketplace, and yet at the same time enable businesses to grow and benefit from those young people.
Our focus is in entrepreneurship and leadership training, and we do this through a program that we call the flagship program, based on 3 core areas: leading self, leading the marketplace, and leading Africa. Because we believe as an organization that here in Africa, no one is coming to save us. And we need to build and raise leaders internally and build solutions across the continent so that we can change the narrative of Africa. We believe that we are the most endowed continent. Just like we have a lot of minerals, young people are a treasure and a resource that we need to exploit as a continent.
Crossroads is a program that works with 4 years, at least 4 years of experience, and equips a person who's just starting to ask themselves, where am I in the workplace?
Who, at this point in their careers, they have gotten enough experience to try and figure out what they want to do in the future. But sometimes that might look like not being able to have the capacity to actually make the next move.
So what happens is most of us, the first job chooses us. But at some point you start to ask, why am I doing this job?
If I want to pivot into a new role, how do I go about it?
And that's what we call a crossroads.
I am fairly equipped now for a managerial role in terms of my experience, but do I have actually the skills and capacity to lead a team?
But you want to do more, you want to be involved in impact. Crossroads then is perfect for you.
I think what the program has done for me in my capacity as an employee, it first has enabled me to step into the business owner's shoes, so that when I am going to the business owner with proposals, when I am interacting with clients, I have a 360 view of what certain decisions organizations position, and that has really been helpful. Internally, it has also helped me to be able to lead a team.
The biggest magic is seeing somebody connect who I am and the work I do, because that's a place where people work with excellence and have more impact. But also enjoy seeing them being promoted and sort of taking up new responsibilities. I think one of them is now actually working for us. We ended up recruiting him from a different organization. We have somebody who moved to UK and is an assistant manager. We have somebody who is a talent manager. I mean, they are all in different spaces, but the thing I love the most is that they can now connect work and who they are.
So my entrance to Lapid is not your everyday kind of entrance. I met the founder, Esther, at a different forum. It was actually a recruitment for Carnegie Mellon, and she happened to know the lady who was doing the recruiting, and so did I, and I was coming to just give her a talk because I'd gone to the campus. And we just got chatting in the car, and she said, you know what, come, let's see what you can do together. And I said, fantastic, you sound like you're doing something great. And I've been in the program now for a while, and that's how I came to learn about Crossroads. A fantastic class, did it in 2020, which also made it a very interesting time, right? Because COVID times, lockdown, also at a crossroads. I was already thinking about what do I want to do next, about work, about my life, and boom, I found myself in the perfect class.
When I joined Lapid Crossroads, I was a business analyst at Seed Africa Group. This was an individual contributor role where I was just checking the business data and making recommendations for what the business can do better.
At the time, I had just started leading teams at a larger capacity. I had been leading teams earlier in a more informal capacity. So when I started Crossroads, I got to understand my leadership style. I got to understand why teams behave the way they do. I got to understand how teams are formed, how to cement myself as a change maker and a decision maker.
After Crossroads, I got a promotion at my place of work and was made a leader of others. Now I was required to manage other individuals and also be responsible for their performance.
Out here, we always hear that, you should be an entrepreneur, but no one has ever told me that there's something called entrepreneurship that you can actually build in the company and spaces you are at. For me, that was phenomenal. So that changed my mindset in this way. If there was a problem or a gap I thought I could fix, right, then I would look at it, okay, how would I go about building a solution for it?
The second lesson that I learned was around personal mastery and change, is that you have to be a master of self and understand what motivates me in terms of reward and threat. So basically you assess how people within your team and even yourself look at primary reward and primary threats, and you look at what is it that you're able to motivate your team in doing. So you look at such things and they allow you to lead a team as well as know yourself.
That one is mindset. But mindset is a game changer. How do you change the way you think and look? And that's like part of my everyday life, you know? I need to look 10 years ahead, 10 years behind. When they talk about leadership dynamics, they ask you if you're going to lead others, you know? You have to be in a growth mindset 24/7 to be able to do so. So that was just fantastic.
What has come across for me is that these people have gone on to pivot in the various organizations that they worked in, but also go a step higher.
When I think about success in this program, it's us to allow business owners to focus on business development. As managers take ownership of part of business development, but even the operations of organizations. And that allows organizations then to realize their full potential because they have the right managers and leaders within the organizations.
I would say if you're someone who's at the point of their career where they are not sure about what their next step is, or if you're someone who can clearly see the next step, but you do not have the soft skills that will enable you to make the most of that step, then I will say Crossroads is definitely the place for you, because you'll get access to mentors, you'll get access to networks, you'll get access to a community of like-minded individuals who've walked the path, who can support you and guide you in making that decision. And even moreover, after you have completed the program, give you access to a space where you get to implement what you have learned throughout the program. And I will say that is the value of Crossroads, and that is why you should be a part of the program as well.
And then two, if you make that choice, make the choice to also do the work, because the work is not easy.
And so for me, when I talk to employers, and this is something that I think about for myself and every other organization that I've worked in, you have a responsibility to grow yourself, but also you have a responsibility to grow your teams. And that determines the quality of work that you end up with. And so what we are providing is an opportunity to partner with you to grow your team, to have the capacity that they serve you even better, and are able to grow the business. That is, we allow individuals to be people and purpose-driven people at that. The quality of their work will increase, and ultimately the people will benefit our employers and businesses. So please send us your people.
Thank you so much, Faith, for the Crossroads video. I'm sure that the video can't exhaust everything that is taught at Crossroads, or that it's learned at Crossroads. So to apply for the Crossroads, that is if you have 8 and above years of working experience, you can use the link in the chat box. Feel free to click the link in the chat box to access the application link for the Crossroads program, and also you can share it to anyone that you feel might benefit from the program. Yes, so before we move on, I would like to acknowledge our partners, who are the Annual African Conference on Social Entrepreneurship, ACOSE. So there's a short video on ACOSE, which I would like us to watch.
Africa, social enterprises. Across Africa, social enterprises are driving change. These businesses are driven by purpose and not by profit, prioritizing the empowerment of communities and building sustainable futures. This is social economy. The social economy is driven by social enterprises, civil society groups, foundations, non-profits, and individuals, all working to address the gaps left by traditional economic systems. Together, They create opportunity, reduce inequality, and build a more inclusive Africa. ACOSE, the annual Africa Conference on Social Entrepreneurship, champions this vision. It's a space where Africa's social entrepreneurs, innovators, policymakers, and change makers gather to celebrate the achievements on social economy and co-create solutions for its growth. The 8th edition of the conference, ACOSE 8, shall focus on Africa's social economy through discussions on social finance, climate resilience, youth empowerment, technology, among others. Together, we elevate the ideas, people, and initiatives shaping Africa's transformation. ACOSE 8 is more than a conference. It's a celebration of Africa's social economy and a call to action to build a better, more inclusive future.
Once again, thank you, ACOSE, for making this webinar a success. So as I had mentioned before, there's also a link in the chat box on ACOSE, so you can check and register on it. You can click it to check on ACOSE and register. And also feel free to use the chat box as the meeting goes on, and you will get real-time answers to your questions. So thank you for being with me this far. I would like to welcome Rufena to take over the next session.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for setting the stage and sharing about the incredible vision and values of Lapid Leaders Africa, as well as the upcoming events. So hello, everyone. I'm Rufena Orenge. I'm a Lapid Leaders Africa alumni, and I'm truly honored to be your co-host today, or tonight rather, for this part of the session. It's my privilege to introduce one of our speakers for today's session, whose impact in the realm of youth, work, and leadership is nothing short of inspiring. So today, Lapid Leaders Africa is hosting an engaging webinar session on women when women lead, actually, as we engage with women in leadership who will get to share their journey with us. Please share with us the key expectations you have for today's session on the chat box. Our speaker today is Esther Mwaniki. She's the founder, CEO, and lead facilitator of Lapid Leaders Africa. She's a holder of a Master's of Public Service and Administration from New York University. She is also an alumni of Kenyatta University, where she pursued a bachelor's degree in commerce accounting option. Esther is a seasoned, Esther is a seasoned writer. She's a strategic risk manager, a civic innovator, a leader, and a generational healer. She's passionate about development of people, processes, systems of organizations in Africa. She has a unique eye for problems affecting startups and enjoys helping them tackle such problems and deal with complexities with an aim of building the structures that support their growth. She also enjoys working with and developing entrepreneurial and civic leaders for the development of Africa. Esther has a rich extended working experience of close to 20 years. She started her career as a senior associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers Kenya, that is PwC, where she served for 5 years before transitioning to the role of a manager based in UK. Later on, she came back to Kenya, where she served as an assurance manager for PwC and later moved to GTB Bank as the head of risk and compliance. Esther founded Lapid Leaders Africa in 2014, and through the flagship program, has served over 1,400 young leaders and built a community of over 8,000 change makers. Some of her highlights in her career journey have been: she was recognized by Obama Foundation and awarded as an Obama Fellow. She was awarded an African Women in Public Service Fellowship by Oprah Winfrey. She was recognized by Africa Leadership Initiative, a guarantee of Ford Foundation for running one of the most impactful leadership programs for the youth in Africa. She was rated outstanding in PwC appraisal system for exemplary performance. So Esther believes that these highlights were made possible by the foundation her service as a school captain at St. Francis Girls High School developed. Her core values are excellence and servant leadership, and she believes in going an extra mile in every task she engages in. So please join me in welcoming Esther Mwaniki to lead us in the next segment. You can welcome her through some emoji reactions, please, your favorite emojis. So welcome, Esther. Welcome and welcome once again. Yeah.
Hi, Rufena.
Hi, Faith. Hi, Esther. Sorry. Welcome,
My name
Esther.
has been changed to Faith today. Thank you
Yeah.
for that introduction. Thank you, Rufena, for that introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you, Nicole, for running the session so far. I am grateful for that, and it's nice to see all of you. My name is Esther Mwaniki, as has been read by that long intro. I am the founder and the CEO of Lapid Leaders Africa, and it's an honor and a privilege for me to be having this conversation with you guys. I've been joined by a phenomenal lady who I'm hoping I'm able to put on pin, or Faith is able to put her on pin, so that I have her here as I read her profile. But we've been joined by a phenomenal lady who is going to be sort of the guest speaker for this session. I am the host. That means that my role today is primarily to ask questions and to interact with her. The way we foresee this working is I will ask quite a bit of questions, just some thoughts around what we're thinking about, which is around when women lead. And we will have a very interactive session together. And then at some point, we'll also open it up for you to ask questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So please put up within the chat room any comments, any questions, anything that's standing out for you, please put it up in the chat room. We want to make sure that we have room for all of us. And even as Faith tries to sort of get a trophy into the pin, maybe let me hear from one or two people. What drew you to this webinar? What drew you to this conversation? And what are you hoping to hear from us? I'd love to hear from two volunteers. What drew you to this webinar? What are you hoping to be able to catch through this webinar? And if you know your name, just know I will land on you. So just unmute before I do. What drew you us to this webinar? I want to hear from us.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hi, Claire.
Yeah, I can go. What drew me to this particular webinar was actually the title, when women lead. So like I just wanted to know and also just get to listen what everyone else here in this platform has to say about that. So I'm eager to listen and also contribute in my own capacity. Thank you.
All right, I love that. So the curiosity of when women lead, what's the implication of when women lead? What are the challenges of when women lead? Thank you, Claire, for sharing that. Maybe let me hear from one or two more people. What drew you to this webinar? What's a question that you hope that we will answer?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, my name is Jackie Karagai. I'd agree with the previous person who's just spoken that the title really drew me to this webinar. And I wanted to hear more of the challenges that other women are facing in terms of leadership. Having coming from a background in construction, and and as you all know, it's a male-dominated field. So as a woman, I wanted to know some of the challenges that people face and how I can be able to deal with that, especially right now that into that space, and I'm looking forward into leadership. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Karagai, for sharing that. The thought that I'm hearing is some of us work in male-dominated spaces, and we want to hear about the challenges that people face in those spaces, and therefore then figure out what are ways that we can be able to go around these challenges. I think that's a good thought to sit with. I still have room for one more. Maybe the last person you can share with us, who is a woman leader that you look up to? And I'd actually like to hear from some gentlemen. I tend to think that these conversations are not just for women, they belong to gentlemen as well. And then Faith, kindly give me co-hosting rights so that I'm also able to have two people hosting at the same time. Or Nicole, you can give me co-hosting rights. I'll be able to do both. Yes, let me hear from one more person who is something that you look up to. A lady that you look up to. This month we're celebrating International Women's Day. Who is someone who's inspired you? And as you think about that, let me actually just speak about myself. I'm greatly inspired by women who have contributed to the liberation journey of Kenya. And we did an exercise last year of honoring elders, women elders who have played a big role in the history of Kenya. We honored women like Mama Jael Mbogo. Mama Jael Mbogo ran for political positions in 1969. 1969 was, we were all sort of just somewhere. And she was running for political positions. And because of the work that she did, we now have capacity to be able to have politicians running with ease. At some point, she was part of the people who started the Maendeleo Wanawake. She was one of the co-founders of Ford Foundation. And for me, the reason it was very important for us to honor and celebrate her is a lot of the political freedoms that we enjoy today, they have been worked on. I think somebody who is hosting us kindly just make sure that everybody's on mute so that we don't listen to too much of our family stories. But yes, that's a woman that we celebrated Mama Jael Mbogo. We celebrated one more person, Mama Wahu. Mama Wahu is an educationist and a social justice advocate who's done some phenomenal work in the space of advocating for social economies. And she's a woman that I respect greatly. Last year, Nairobi University did this exercise of documenting how I think when you're unmuting, you may want to also just make sure that you don't mute myself and also Trufi. So those are two women that I look up to, and there are many others that I could list. I want to hear from one more person before I introduce Trufi. At least I've been able to pin Trufi. I will figure out how to pin myself in the process. One more person. Who is a woman that you look up to? Yes, Mary, please speak up. I don't know if you need to be unmuted. Yes, go for it.
Yeah. I won't show my face, but I look up to Professor Marangu. I'm not sure whether anyone like here knows of her. She was, she's a professor at the university, and she was the first professor at KU, and she really promoted the rights of women to further their education. She built a lot of women there to continue to their PhD, looked for scholarships for them so that they can lead and lead other women. And she's a leader also in nutrition. And she was my boss for a while. And while she was my boss, she gave me that opportunity to exercise my leadership by allowing me that freedom. So I look up to her. She's Professor Marangu.
I love that. Thank you for sharing about Professor Marangu. We celebrate her. I want to request that all of us, even as we have this conversation, let's take a minute and identify women leaders who inspire us. And let's celebrate them in the chat room. Let's celebrate them on the on social media. I keep saying that we need to understand the history of the International Women's Day. Actually, it came up because some women were demonstrating against the lack of freedoms for women in that age. And so it was actually driven by activists. Please go and research the history for it, who said that the rights of women needed to have a louder voice. And so today it's very easy to miss why we actually celebrate International Women's Day, but it's because of women who've gone before us and who fought for the rights that we have today. You would be surprised at how young the women freedoms are. And so understanding why we celebrate it is a very important part of this conversation. And I would love to see us put up in the chat room conversations of women you look up to, women who inspire you. Let's take that work of actually celebrating each other. And as we do that, I will celebrate Truphosa Kwaka-Sumba. Truphosa Kwaka-Sumba is our guest speaker today. She's a leadership coach. She's a facilitator. She's an education and governance leader. It's a privilege and an honor for me to be hosting you today, Truphosa. We met through a friend very many years ago, at least heard of each other. We never got a chance to meet in person. But I am one of those people who believes when it's God's time, he makes it happen. And this last year, we met in person in something that I'm going to talk about today. And it's an honor and a privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I think she's joining us from Switzerland. I always confuse Switzerland and one more country that starts with an S. She's going to share a bit more about that. But karibu sana. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm going to read her bio and then I'm going to give her an opportunity to share with us what's most important to her. Truphosa Kwaka-Sumba is an accomplished education leader, a leadership coach, a governance expert who is recognized for her contribution for value-based leadership and institutional transformation. She was honored as one of Kenya's top purpose-driven leaders for outstanding impact in education, governance, and mentorship. She formerly served as the acting deputy vice chancellor to finance and administration, and also as the principal at St. Paul's University, Nairobi campus. Her leadership extends beyond academia, having served on various boards, including Longhorn Publishing Limited and Life in Abundance in Kenya. She's a sought-after speaker, a mentor, a writer. Truphosa has been featured on NTV, has been featured on Hope FM, has been featured on Family TV, engages audiences on leadership, faith, and governance. She has contributed to several publications, including Every Leader's Battle. That's a book that I want to read, and we agree she's going to give me a copy of it or get a copy of it to me. Kindly, if you haven't seen the book, please check it out. I saw it on Amazon. It's called Every Leader's Battle. I'm very curious about that book, especially because of its title. She's also written African Women's Leadership, Realities and Opportunities, a fantastic book, I understand. Please look for it, and has served as a columnist in Leadership Today in Africa Journal. She runs a blog dedicated to women in leadership. I'm hoping that she will tell us what's the name of the blog. She's a committed Christian, an ordained clergy with the Anglican Church of Kenya. So we call her within our space Reverend Truphosa a lot. I don't know if she's called a lot of that, but we really enjoy to do that. Reverend Truphosa is an ordained clergy with the Anglican Church of Kenya, serves as ACK St. Augustine Madaraka. That's where she serves, where she leads in youth mentorship. She serves as the chaplain of the Mothers Union. That's fantastic, Reverend Truphosa. And she is a visionary behind the Young Ladies Fellowship, a platform dedicated to nurturing the next generation of female leaders. Academically, she holds a Bachelor of Commerce from Daystar University. If you hold a Bachelor of Commerce, I hold a Bachelor of Commerce. So this is a space for Bachelor of Commerce people. Please tell us in the chat room if you hold a Bachelor of Commerce, or if you're from Daystar University, please celebrate your alumni. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from Daystar University, a Master's in Economic Administration and Management from Manchester University. That's a fantastic university. I remember I worked at Leeds at some point, and we used to do a lot of trips between Leeds and Manchester. And so I know Manchester is a fantastic university, and is currently pursuing a PhD in business management. I am glad she is, because every time I Google you, for whatever reason, my ChatGPT calls you Dr. Truphosa. So it's ahead of you. She's also a certified leadership coach and a member of both the International Leadership Association, and the Kenya Institute of Management. And she has a deep passion for transformational leadership, for governance, and institutional development. Reverend Truphosa is committed to shaping Africa through faith, leadership, and empowerment. Please join me in celebrating the one and only Reverend Truphosa Kwaka-Sumba, one of our top purpose-driven leaders and a woman that I greatly celebrate and honor. Thank you so much, Trufi, for the work that you've done for the country. The reason we decided to do this purpose-driven awards is there's so many people who are doing phenomenal work. In between the chaos that we talk about in this country, you'd be surprised at how people are doing some fantastic work. And we went through this extensive a process of people nominating people who they thought were purpose-driven. We defined purpose-driven as the intersection of leadership excellence and impact-driven, and then went through a process of evaluating each of those profiles and ultimately ended up with what we call the top 25 purpose-driven leaders. And Trufi was part of that. And it's our way of saying thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for your commitment to faith. Thank you for your commitment to governance. Thank you for your commitment to women in leadership. We honor and celebrate you greatly. Santi sana. And I wanted just to give you a minute to just say what matters to you from that whole profile. And actually even outside that profile.
Okay, first of all, thank you.
I don't know if your sound can go back up a bit.
Can you hear me? Thank you so much.
It still needs to go higher.
Okay. Can you hear?
Still very low.
No, uko kwa giza. Tuko kwa giza.
Please work on your muting. Kindly make sure you stay muted. I think the team is not able to mute everybody. So just make sure that you've muted your gadget. It will help us to make sure that we are able to have this conversation with ease. And also, as we do this intro, please share with us in the chat room what's a question that you may have for Reverend Trufi, so that then we are able to sort of ask those questions.
Hey, is this better?
Yes, much better.
Excellent. Good evening, and I am absolutely honored to be here today, and thank you so much. It is so nice to see some people that I know. My classmate Pauline, she was my class prefect, and you are also the deputy head girl. I think so. So you're my deputy head girl. It is so nice to see you, Esther, the visionary of Lapid, together with amazing women, that I know who are here. I think I've seen Teresa, I've seen Purity, and a number of others. I honor you today and celebrate. And of course, the gentlemen who've decided to come and be part of this conversation. We truly, truly honor you. And Coach Maureen, thank you. Thank you so much. Esther, for me, as I look at my life, I keep saying my life is a life of grace. It is pure grace. When I think about where I'm coming from, when I think about just the circumstances around my life, mine is a story of grace. And when I say grace, I mean favor. I have been favored abundantly and tremendously by God. And so to be here today and to be able to have this conversation is because of God's grace. I must also say that I am a mother, I'm a wife, and those are the two primary things I also really enjoy. Yeah, so thank you, Esther, for having me.
I love that.
I'm truly, truly honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time even to join us. You're joining us from, is it Swaziland? Or is it Switzerland? I always confuse those two.
Yeah, I join you from Switzerland for the time being, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us from Switzerland to have this conversation around when women lead. I'm going to ask just a few questions, but actually one question that keeps coming for me, and I know I haven't asked this. Kwaka-Sumba, where is that from?
It is from Kenya.
It is.
It is from Kenya, yes, it is.
You know,
I'm very, very Kenyan and very married to a Kenyan, yes.
Are you from Swahili? Where I've never come across that name.
Don't even go there. Just know it is Kwaka. So this is the way I like to explain it. I'm the daughter of Kwaka and the wife of Sumba. And somehow along the way, because of at the time, by the time I was getting married, I was, I had already done quite a bit. So a lot of my certificates read Kwaka. So I opted to just carry along Kwaka and add Sumba. And I'm glad and I'm so blessed that Mr. Sumba has no problem whatsoever with
that's
that,
nice.
with that combination.
The reason I ask is I believe in the power of naming and the names that we go with. I actually think of them as a prophetic voice that sort of speaks before you. And so even within Lapid, we do this. Often I ask people, what is the meaning of your name? Because I think that starts to bring identity home. I think within African context, we are still battling with ideas around our names, battling with ideas around where we come from and whether we want to be our local names, whether we want to be the Western names, what they represent. But we like to create space for people to just say, my name is Esther Wairimo Mwaniki, and I love that name Wairimo. I have gone and dug very deeply to understand what Wairimo means in my background. And so that's why I lift that, because I think there is power in just sort of understanding the history behind those names. And so thank you for sharing both those names. And that's something perhaps somebody here should spend some time on. So you have held senior leadership, education. When I talk to you, what I sense is education is at your heart. And in fact, I remember recently we were having a conversation and there's some things that you say that stayed with me around how our education has been colonized so that then we break the connection between education and serving the communities. And I think that that was a big thing that you lifted for me. I don't know if you want to expand on that. And as you do that, perhaps share with us, what is your heart for education?
So I think for me, the way I look at it is that number one, in fact, one of my purpose statement is I'm created to build people and build great institutions for Africa. So my persuasion is that education should not be preparing you for a job. Education should be preparing you and build in you capacity to serve and solve problems.
I totally agree with that.
So building that capacity is what for me is very keen. And I can't remember at what point, I think one of my university professors, whichever university that was, I remember them emphasizing and saying, the reason you're here is I'm here to help, the professor would say, I'm here to help you think.
Love that.
And so if you come out of this program and you have changed how you think, then I know you can go out and think about solutions. And that for me was very, very life-changing, because then it meant it doesn't really matter then. I mean, not that it is irrelevant, but it doesn't matter what I'm studying, but is my thinking changed?
I resonate with that greatly. I think though, ultimately, and I tell people this, there's such a huge, I think about how much cows and goats were sold for people to go to school, whether it's in primary to secondary to university. There's such a huge investment that goes into you going to school. And the reason we do it has to be very clear. What's the purpose of education has to be very clear. And we have two possibilities that are competing with each other, especially in Kenyan and African context. You have a possibility where people are going to education for jobs. And that's great, but it's actually a very low hanging fruit to be educated for jobs. Because what I then tend to hear with a lot of young people is I didn't get a job. And so all that education was useless. But actually you missed the point of education. The point of education is what you said. It's to teach you how to think. The point of education is for you to solve problems. And so if you're educated and there are problems around you, The point is not the jobs. The point is there are problems around you that haven't been solved. And so that connection between education, thinking, and problem solving, I think, is a very powerful connection that needs to be constantly lifted. And perhaps from your experience from the university space and in education, what are some of the disconnects you find? Because I, for example, on this other end, find that as we work with younger and older people, there is such a disconnect of the understanding of why education. Do you see that?
It's the way our education system is structured. So it may actually not even be the young person's fault. It is how the system is structured and the way society, the way we have positioned schooling in our society. So some things you don't have to be told. There are things that are implied by the way the system is. You know, when we talk about curriculum, there is the obvious curriculum, but there is the implied curriculum. And our implied curriculum does not, unfortunately, place us to think or to think that we are there to solve a problem. So there's a whole philosophy that needs to be changed, the approach, the system that needs to be changed, that would then result in a different outcome. That would be my thinking. So I wouldn't actually really blame anybody for thinking that they need jobs. I think it is that we have set up our society that way.
I love that. I totally agree.
Yeah. So that's
and
my
we've
take.
set it up in the form of the conversations we have on TV, the conversations we have on social media, the conversations we have with parents. And I love what you just said about the implied curriculum. And actually, that's even a louder voice than the actual curriculum that people are taken through. And I think that's an important point to lift, because I think there's quite a bit of work for us to do, especially people who talk about that I'm passionate about Africa. Africa's assignment, Africa's purpose as a continent will be activated when we allow education to do what education is supposed to do, which is around developing thinkers, which is around developing problem solvers, which is around building purpose-driven people who are committed to serving the continent. And so I really appreciate that as a thought. And that perhaps lifts some of what I'd love to hear from you. So Trophy has served as the acting Deputy Vice Chancellor for St. Paul's in the context of finance and administration, and for years as the principal for St. Paul's Nairobi campus. And so you've sat in leadership. And this conversation is around when women lead. And so I'd love to hear from you some of the biggest lessons, maybe 2-3 lessons that you've learned in your leadership journey. I will lift for you. One of them is we need to make sure that education serves its purpose. But what are other lessons that you've learned around leadership?
So I think number one is that when I think about leadership is about serving. It is about service. So for me, that has been one of the greatest lessons. So let me not rank them. I don't have number 1 to 3. So I'll just say what I think. Number 2, leadership is about people. And people are at the center of any leadership journey. And when you think about it, you must really put people there. Number 3, and like I've said, these are not necessarily in any order. These are just, things that for me, I think are important, is that as a leader, leadership or great leadership begins by leading yourself. So when I think about any leadership journey, as a leader, you must first lead yourself, because you cannot take people to a place you haven't been. But number 2 is to remember that leadership is about people. We are not here because of buildings. Buildings are important. Infrastructure is important. But we are here because of people. And there must be real impact in the lives of people. Why? Because we define leadership as influence. Why are you influencing people? You're influencing people so that they can be able to achieve a certain goal. And therefore, as a result of their influence or your influence, there must be there must be impact that you have left in the lives of people. And then you can only do that if you serve people, if you put the needs of people at the center of your leadership. And I think for me, those are key things that I see as I think about leadership.
I love them, and they actually resonate very well with how we think about leadership, even within Lapid. I love what you said, that leadership as service, the idea that your biggest achievement when you think about yourself as a leader is to be able to say, I served XXX. I contributed XXX. I enabled XXX. And that is a very different framing from what, for example, you talk about today. When I think about whether it's in our political class or in our social class, there is an idea around how do we accumulate power? How do we become the people who are richest? How do we make sure that our children are? But reframing that to think about leadership as an opportunity to serve in the spaces that God places you, whether that's in education, whether that's in construction, whether that's in media, to ask, what is the problem here that I can be able to serve people with? I am such a fan of books. In my desk, there's always like 100 books 24/7. And when I think about, and I've always loved books from a very early age, but the thing about books, which is deep for me, is I always think about the person who takes time to sit and write and share the things and the wisdom that they know so that other people have a platform of learning the same thing. And I think that's the heart of service. And so I think that's a big thing for all of us to lift, even as we think about women as leaders, and to ask the question, who are we serving and how are we serving? And I love that. And then I love what you've talked about, that leadership is about people, and asking, who am I impacting? Who are the people that have been placed around me and who consciously or unconsciously you will impact? And that's just the other thing about leadership that I find, whether you're conscious of it or not, you are impacting people. When I think about, for example, each of the purpose-driven awardees that we recognize, each one of them told us, I did not imagine that anybody would nominate me. But that tells you there are people who are constantly looking at you and you're impacting them positively or negatively. And so thinking about leadership in the context of impact that you're having on people. And then lastly, which is such an important thing, leadership always starts with leading yourself. And perhaps, at least from my own experience, that is the harder one. I remember there's a time we have this whole experience of sending students on what we call an Africa experience, and they go to a country within the region. And we had sent a cohort to Ethiopia that I will never forget. And they came back and they had a meeting with one of the directors in Africa Union. And he told them, I moved to Africa Union because I wanted to change Africa. But when I was here, I thought I can't change Africa before I change Africa Union. And then one day I sat here and I thought, I actually don't need to change Africa Union or Africa. I just need to change myself. I think often we underestimate how much leadership starts with yourself and building the values, the character, the mindset that enables you to lead yourself, so that then that replicates into how you serve and also replicates into the people that you serve. And so for me, the thing that I'm curious about is, of these three, who has impacted you the most?
You mean a person?
Yes. I mean, I'm just thinking about the leadership that you've encountered around you, because then that most likely has influenced the leader that you are today.
Okay. So let me just give one person. I mean, I've been influenced by so many people. And even people I have worked under, and some of them remain my greatest, I mean, I can't finish, but let me just speak about one. One of the people I have thrived and served under, and I enjoyed working under, is known as Professor Esther Mombo. And Professor Esther Mombo was my first supervisor when I joined St. Paul's University. Now, I must tell you this. When I joined St. Paul's University, my aim was to work in St. Paul's University for 2 years. At that time, I was in a program, and I thought I want to be in an academic institution that would then help me finish this program, and I would go back to consulting. At that time, I had been in consulting work. So I go to work at St. Paul's University, and I'm told as I go in, I apply. By the way, I applied, I saw an advert in the newspaper, I applied, and I thought, well, if they take me, fine. If they don't, it's fine. I mean, funny enough, I applied, I went for the interview, I passed and was taken in. And I go in, and Professor Esther Mombo is my boss. And what I had been told about her is, you will meet this lady. She is a single lady. She's a professor. She is bad news. For everything you will do, avoid her like a hot potato. And so I was told many horrible things. And we've had this conversation. So, I mean, even if she hears this, it's nothing new to her. And so I remember going for the interview, and I saw her, and I thought, that must be the one I was told keep away from. It is so funny. I go in, and I enjoy working under Professor Esther Mombo. In fact, it got to a point that people believed we were relatives.
Oh, wow.
It got to a point that people said, we act the same, we think the same. And I can tell you more other horrible stories that came as a result of that, but that's not why we are here today. But I'll tell you something about Professor Esther Mombo. She was my greatest supporter. She was my greatest advisor. She challenged me. There are many times when I wanted to quit, and she told me, you are not quitting. She would listen to me, and then she would say, now go and sort out yourself. And she brought out the leader in me. She literally brought me out. I can tell you that for free any day, even if I'm sleeping. I have said this so many times. And she also, if I did something foolish, she would say to me, in fact, she would call me and say, Sasa, hiyo ni nini unafanya? Those who are Kenyans, what she would say is basically, so I hear you've done this, that you're doing, And she would call me out, and she would say, no, that's not the way you're going to do it. But I enjoyed working with her. Okay. Now, why do I say this? Is because the rumor out here is that working with women is difficult, and that women, two strong women, cannot work together. But she was the best. There are many times I even told her, oh, by the way, now I want to quit. I want to go back and do the things I love to do. And she'd tell me, you're not going, and I'm not accepting your resignation. And then I'll tell you something else she did. And I mean, like I've said, there are many stories I can say about Prof, as I call her. I was pregnant at some point. I got pregnant, and I was so sick. In fact, I remember one of the days I got sick, I had actually gone for a meeting with her, and I got so sick I couldn't drive. You know what she did? She called a driver and said, take her home, and if she gets worse, take her to hospital. And after that, she told me, work from home. Now, Esther, this is 2013. We did not know about working from home. She said, work from home. I'll only require you where I need your physical presence. And when I need your physical presence, I will send a driver to pick you and drop you. Where have you heard of such a thing? Even now, people are struggling.
True.
Now, why do I bring that story? And I needed to is because she saw the potential in me, and she decided to work with me and smoothen, sandpaper my rough edges. I still have them, by the way. Number two, she was a great support. I know she went to so many meetings and spoke for me and said, no, that is the only person I have that I can give this role to.
Wow.
And so many people would come and say, oh, Prof really loves you. She defended you in this meeting. I didn't even know, As a result, Esther, I think I'm jumping ahead of myself.
No, please go for it.
Is that two different positions were created for me, and I rose
Wow.
up the rank. Those two
Wow.
positions did not exist. But here is a lady, a woman leader, who said and decided that she was going to sponsor me, support me. I did not know her.
Wow.
Okay. And, you know, I had been told if you ever work with a single lady who's more mature, they'll give you heartache as a mother. My goodness, she was the exact opposite. I mean, she loved on me.
Oh.
And so on. So my experience, I mean, she's just one that I can talk about. I have several others that I can talk about. I have
And
also
I love
worked
that
with
one.
men. Yeah.
No, please, we'll come back to the men, but I really love that as an example, Trufi. That's such a fantastic example because I think it has several lessons that I think I want to lift. I like where you started about you had planned to do 2 years. How many years did you end up doing in St. Paul's?
Ended up doing 14.
Yeah. And I like that because there's a plan that man has always that seems smart and well thought out. But then there's a plan that the Lord always has. And the impact that you've then had in St. Paul's because you submitted to that plan is a big deal. And I wanted to lift that up because I find, and especially when people are young, you have this fixation of what your plan should look like. That you must do X, 2 years, the next 3 years, the next place, you're out and you start your business. I hear such stories often. But I want to lift that, just make sure that I lift that 2 years for Trufi and say, many are the plans of man, but also man is clueless. And I think somebody says that Lord watches them and he laughs. And so please allow life and allow God to lead you. You will land in places that you think you have a plan, but that plan will end up becoming not a plan, and that is fine. I think that's the first thing that I'm hearing you speak about. I love about what you said. I think it's not just that she brought the best out of you. I think it's also that you allowed yourself to be sharpened and prepared for those roles. I say that because I love the parable, and I just mix this and that's fine. I love the parable of talents, and I love the way you had 3 people, one who had 10 talents, one who had 5 talents, and then you had one who had 1 talent. But the way the mind of the person who had 1 talent thought through that 1 talent, they thought through it as my boss is a hard master, and because they are a hard master, I go and hide my talent. And because of that, eventually they never replicate that talent. And I lift that to say your own attitude drives actually your ability to be mentored. I do not even need to ask this, but there is no way Prof would have invested in you and identified you as the person who can run with the work if your attitude wasn't one of a student. And so that's an important thing to also just lift for us, to understand that there are people who are actually placed in your path and they can sharpen and create possibilities for you with ease. But you also must allow yourself to submit to sort of the process through which that whole process works. And if you're a leader, to also understand that you can actually create a reverent trophy. And that's the power of leadership. There are people that their path will be very different if they interact with a leader who has been assigned to them, because then they see the capabilities, they drag them to meetings. It's a Moses and the Joshua thing, that as you go with the prof to all the meetings, you're catching, you're learning, and in the process, you're being prepared for the 14 years of impact. And so to speak to somebody here and say, allow yourself to be mentored. The process may or may not be in line with what you expected it to be, but it could open very many doors for you. The other thing that I hear that I just also want to lift is the biases that people have for women. You talk about strong women. The reality is, Professor may have been a strong woman. If it's a guy, they're called assertive. And the sad part is actually those biases are not just propelled by men, they're actually also propelled by women. And it's the other bias that you lifted around that person is single, and therefore, because they're single, the following things will happen. All those things shape how you interact with the people that you work with. And so you must constantly ask yourself, how is my mind with regard to the people that I'm working with? Because that becomes the output at which you get from that work. And then the last thing I wanted to ask and lift is, have you been able to do the same process for somebody else?
Thanks, Esther. Let me go back first. I think there's something I want to really emphasize.
Mm.
And it is important to have a plan for your life.
Mm.
And by the way, at that point, I actually had a strategic plan of what I wanted to achieve by a certain age. So it's important to have a plan for your life, but also recognize that your plan is not foolproof. Because you are not endowed with all knowledge and all wisdom. And so allow God to help you navigate that plan. That I want to emphasize. Number two is what you have said. It's important that you keep a teachable spirit, even now. But teachable spirit. Be the kind of person who can learn, who can be taught. You see, when you know everything, then you lose out from learning. And I think I like to emphasize that you do need to learn. So now to what I think you wanted me to respond to, and maybe also say something there, that biases will always be there. There'll always be something someone can catch about you. You're not tall enough, you're not short enough, you're not educated enough, there'll always be something. Somebody can find reason as to why you don't qualify for something. And so when you make peace with that, it helps you.
No, I totally agree.
It helps you, because then you say, well, it's true.
Yeah.
But on these 2 or 3 things, I'm good. Yeah. So I just thought I wanted to throw that in first. Yeah.
I love that. I totally love that. Thank you for highlighting that. And then somebody you've been able to do the same thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And perhaps as you answer that one, help us to understand how to be good mentees and how to be good mentors. Just some thoughts around that, because I think you've done quite a bit of work in that space.
Yeah. So I have, as a result of the privilege I have had in St. Paul's University, and by the way, in other places, beyond this, in fact, I was just thinking about it. One of the things I'm involved in right now is I'm a facilitator with the Africa Governance Program, which is a program that a Pan-African organization involved in climate change negotiations, and I'm one of their facilitators. And I can talk about many other things I've done, but this is what I wanted to say. I can name people that I have mentored and helped to rise. At St. Paul's, I think I can name so many names. I can name Grace. If she was here, I think she would have, said the same. I can name Kennedy. I can name Duncan. I can name Mary. I can name a number of people that I know I invested in by spending time with them and giving them opportunities to rise. And many of them, I think all the people I have mentioned now, one is a director, one is eventually became the principal after me. Another one became the administrator. Another one earned their doctorate and so on. I mean, I can talk about so many people. But again, you see, Esther, for me, it's coming back to, why am I here? I'm here to build people. I'm here to build capacity of people. And if somebody goes on ahead and is able to use that capacity to impact and bring transformation, I am most fulfilled. I celebrate them. I enjoy it. So, and so I can talk about so many, I mean, in fact, I remember there was a time, my time at St. Paul's, many times when certain critical positions would become available, I would get a call from the Vice Chancellor's office, and he would ask, this position is vacant. Who can you suggest for it?
Oh, that's fantastic.
And there are so many people that
Wow.
by God's grace, because I had worked with them, I had the confidence that if they went to those positions, they would thrive. Now, some of those positions are things they had never done before, but because their attitude and their aptitude and their mindset was that they can do it, I knew that if they go in there, they will do everything they need to do to learn and to be able to get it done. The roles are roles I knew, so I can help you on the side, but allow you to shine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that at all. And it comes down to what it is that they had. Number one, they had a mindset that said, I can do it. Number two, they had an attitude that said, I want to learn, teach me. Number three, they also had an approach to life that said, if work needs to be done, I will be the best. I will be the best. I will put in the hard work. I will go the extra mile. And number four, they are always willing to serve, even where the recognition or the reward will not accrue to them personally. So when I look at those qualities, that's somebody you can work with. Somebody,
Absolutely. It is.
I can tell you, some of those people are people who would come and say to me, one I can remember would say, that time my title was principal. And so for whatever reason, everybody decided my name is principal. And they would say, principal, you have so much work. How can I help you?
Oh, wow.
Now, somebody who asks you that question, there is nothing you can't do for them.
Absolutely.
And I have so many people who said to me, what can I do? How can I help you? I didn't need to pay them. I didn't need to do anything. They just wanted to help. What would I do with them? I would then expose them to a higher level work, coach them on how to do it, and when the time is ripe, sponsor or suggest or propose their names for those positions.
Wow.
Because they were ready.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I love that last part of they were ready, because I think many times people want a sponsor, but also, your name is still on the line. If you put up a sponsor or somebody who their work is not good quality, you've lost that gift of people coming to you and saying, please recommend for me. And so it's that part of the last part that I really celebrate.
I mean, absolutely. And there are people I did propose and they never went. I mean, they didn't do the work, or they gave up in the middle. Of course, that happens, and that's okay. But I keep saying, go in, try. What's the worst that can happen? The worst is you'll fail, and then
you learn.
Yep. Yeah. So it's okay. It's okay. I think the other thing is being teachable. Somebody who says, I want to learn, teach me.
And that's an attitude of the heart. That is, for me, I actually find that that's where the magic is, because if you can tell me, teach me, that humility of teach me tells me that you can learn from anybody. And I think that's a powerful thing. And I think you're saying very big things that I hope everybody's taking notes. One is the teach me, I can do it. They offer themselves. I love what you said about extra mile. I'll come back to that. They offer to volunteer, they serve even when they're not being paid. They do a good job with that. And I have a question for us, and I want somebody to put it up in the chat room. What would people around you say with regards to your attitude, with regards to your aptitude, and with regards to your mindset? Because when it boils down to everything, whether you're a CEO or whether you're a junior person, the thing that counts in terms of your ability to do work is your attitude, your aptitude, and your mindset. What would people around you say about your attitude? What would people around you say about your aptitude? What would people say about you in terms of your mindset? And you said a powerful thing that truthfully I'm just going to sit with now that I have decided I'm going with this whole story a bit more. I love what you said, that you then also gave opportunity to people who are excellence driven, people who are hardworking, people who are willing to go the extra mile. And I lift that up because one of the things that we must understand as a country, as a continent, and I think it's because of the political systems, it helps us to think that things can be created from hot air and that you don't need to work very hard and you will become rich seated in the house because things fall on your plate. But it's that whole idea of there is actually no shortcut. One of my favorite quotes is, go the extra mile. It's never crowded. That space of extra mile is never crowded. And that's a place where people distinguish themselves. And whether that's a woman or a guy, whether that's an entry level or a senior level, your ability to go the extra mile will ultimately determine what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. And I remember the first time that I spent time with you, Trufi. I was looking for that recording, but I couldn't see the recording. The thing that I lifted from you is your commitment to excellence and your ability to say, whatever I do it as unto God. And I think one of the gaps that I see with even our education, unfortunately, is it trains us to do bare minimum to get an A or a B or a C for grades, as opposed to building a character that says, whether I do big things or I do small things, I do them with excellence. So I want you to speak to that. That is a value that's necessary to any woman leader in terms of excellence, and one more value that you think is important.
Mm-hmm. So, Esther, I'm not an A student. I was, in fact, in my living certificate, my headmistress was very gracious enough to label me average. I think she was just being gracious, to be honest. So I'm not an A student. Now, have I gotten A's? Yes, many
For
A's
sure.
after that, Okay. But but I remember that the thing that I always say is, do your best. When you do your best, it also means that you will go beyond the average. You'll go beyond, over and beyond, whatever you do. And so for that reason, whatever I do, and that's what I've tried to do, is always to do it with that kind of extra thing, Some of my mentees who are here will tell you, I love that extra touch. Even if you're dressing, put that extra bit, extra effort, go always beyond. You know why? And I like what you've said, that go the extra mile, it's never crowded. I'll be quoting you going forward. But one of the things I remember, there's a book about, now I've forgotten the title, but anyway, the essence of the book is that average, in fact, this one my father has always told me, nobody celebrates average. Okay, so remember, for me, my living certificate reads average student, but nobody celebrates average. It is the extra mile. There's sometimes, and that for me is something that I keep saying, is that sometimes the extra mile is not paid, it is not remunerated. Sometimes nobody even knows you did the extra mile. And I can give you examples, okay? I can give you examples. When I served as the principal at Nairobi campus, we had a new studio, a TV studio that was being installed within the campus. And there were so many delays in that project till the last day, the day before it was being launched. And the launch was going to be publicized on media, on national media. In fact, I remember, I think it was Linus. Then he was the MD for Nation. He was the guest of honor. So the day before, the studio had rubbish. The fundis were still in there. The equipment was still in boxes. And let me tell you, if it's a TV studio, you have so many bits of equipment. So I decided, Esther, I'm not leaving this campus until the studio is clean.
Wow.
Okay. So by the time they finished, the builders and they came out, it was probably around 6 p.m. So at 6 p.m., I got all the support staff who used to help us with cleaning, and I said, please, today you please don't go home. We will be here. We will do the necessary logistical things, but I need you to work until this place is clean. Now, you would think, you know what I did? I joined the cleaning with them. We cleaned until 2 a.m. I have never forgotten, 2 a.m. At 2 a.m. is when one of them came and said, Madam, tafadhali, tunakuomba uende nyumbani. And I remember the lady, she's called Veronica. I salute her till today. She came and told me, nitahakikisha ya kwamba tumemaliza kabla tutoke hapa. And let me interpret for those who are not Kenyans. She came and said to me, please go home, get a bit of sleep, shower and change. By the time you come, I guarantee you, I will not leave this place until this place is clean. I scrubbed with them. And I'm not saying this to impress us. I'm just giving the illustration of the extra work. So I went home, slept for about an hour, 2 a.m., yes. I went home, slept for about 2 hours, showered and changed. And by 6 a.m., I was back in that studio.
Wow.
The function was starting at 9. I came, and at 9, thank God, at 6, it was clean. So, I just started, putting the other extra bits into place. We had an amazing launch, and the TV studio is there until now. Now, nobody knew other than those who spent the night with me that I was there cleaning. Nobody knew, and nobody needed to know. And so on my appraisal, I wouldn't have written, I spent the night cleaning.
Yeah.
So I never got a raise or a recognition.
For going to sleep at 2 a.m.
No, I didn't. In fact, I think, got or built my personal leadership with the support staff who were there.
Wow.
When I was leaving, they kept coming to tell me, Madam, we don't know what we are going to do. We enjoyed working with you.
Oh.
So I'm saying that, and the truth is, I would then ask them to do anything within reasonable grounds, and they would get it done. Just the fact that I would ask, they would say, Madam, kama meuliza, tunafanya.
Wow. That was also a very respectful team.
Very. So why am I giving that example? And that's a very extreme example. I have had many other examples like that. It is the going the extra mile that counts. So guess what? We had a successful launch. My boss, my supervisor, was very happy. The external guests were very happy. My students were happy. Every stakeholder was happy. So, and I'm glad that, you know, somebody has just sent me, has written on the wall, and you know, they were part of my students at St. Paul's, and this is a man. So Brian, I salute you. So I'm saying that you know, extra work helps, and I can talk about so many, even when I was not in a position of leadership, where I did the extra work. I went over. I looked for excellence, and my staff knew that I would not accept anything below. So I would ask them, so why can't we have it better? What's wrong with it being better? You know, and so part of it, of course, is my personality, but on the other hand, I love nice things. Why can't we just have nice things?
I know. I think that's an important attitude that we all actually need to capture. Though I tell people mediocrity will not get Kenya or Africa ahead. The world doesn't sit and wait and say, you guys will be mediocre and we will celebrate your mediocrity. It will never happen. And especially in today's world, which is a global community kind of conversation, the kind of communities I am in are primarily global communities. And the thing that people don't care whether you're from Kenya, whether you're from Tanzania, whether you're from wherever. The question is, do you have the capacity to deliver good results? And the question that I want to ask again, because I'm a questions person, if Trufi, a principal in St. Paul's, can take the broom to go the extra mile, uje wewe, what is holding you back from doing the extra mile? We have to train ourselves with the small and the big that we will not accept mediocrity, because your reality is the competition that you have is actually not even just local. I was having a conversation with somebody recently, and I was telling them, right now, when you need a social media person or you need some flyers to be done, all you need to do is go to Upwork. Upwork will give you people from across the world. Now, if you have trained yourself that you do basic flyers, low quality flyers, I am telling you at $5, somebody in Indonesia will do very good quality. You do not have the luxury. It's not just even here. You do not have the luxury to sit with mediocrity. And I hear that with especially a lot of people who, I think it's the tragedy of high levels of unemployment, because it trains us that you can get away with anything, you will hustle. You can hustle for a few days. But at some point, if you do not have the capacity to work with excellence, it will come and haunt you. So please take my advice and truth, go the extra mile. And then I want to talk about women a bit more. And I see your passion for women in leadership. And I would love to hear a bit more about that. What has inspired you to become a champion for women stepping into roles of leadership? And I want to just say, even as you answer that, I bet, and the fact that Brian is here, it's not just that you champion just women, or I bet you also champion men, but I want to spend time more on women for just this conversation. What has driven you towards that passion of elevating the voice of women into leadership?
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there are men, not I think, there are men I have also sponsored and mentored and have taken up leadership roles. And I think I gave an example when I stepped when I stepped out of when I moved to another role. My deputy, who had been with me for 7 years, I then, you know, recommended that he takes up the role. And even in his current role, I have really, you know, I was actually part of the team that sponsored and said, this is the right person. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, is whether you have the right qualities in that space. Why women? One is because I'm a woman. So I don't have the experience of having of being a man and saying what it looks like. But being a woman, I've also witnessed spaces where I could make a difference, but have been denied or have been doubted because I'm a woman. And so I've seen the biases, I've experienced the stereotypes that have then, sort of said to me that as a woman, I can make a difference. I've listened to biases. I've seen the stereotypes, and so on. And, even people just saying things like, she's married, she doesn't need the money. Who said?
Really?
For
People
example,
say such things loudly.
yeah, things like that. Or, and so I've seen all these things, and you sort of feel, oh no. And I have had the privilege of being in spaces that is male dominated. I have sat in boardrooms that are male dominated. I have listened to conversations, unfortunately, that I've had to say, I'm sorry, but that conversation I will not accept in my presence.
I love that. Oh, love that. Can I just own that for you? That's such a
Yes.
big thing because I think we tend to choose. I'm such a huge fan of the book of Esther, and we've actually been reading it. And I love the point where God tells him, you cannot be silent. Because I think often we're in rooms where we can tell people are doing things that are not a disservice to women, as an example, and we go silent. I love the fact that you don't.
No. I will not accept that conversation. And if I find somebody, and I may come up very, very hard on them. And I just believe that God has endowed both men and women with capacity and gifts that, if given the right space, will serve and transform humanity. And it is not dependent on whether they were male or female. It is dependent on God's capacity and God's gifts in them. And so providing space and room for more women on the table, for me, is important because they are part of God's creation and part of the partakers of the divine nature of God.
Wow, love that. That's such a powerful way to think about gender. The It's God created male and female. There is a balance that both bring. There's room for both in every space. There's a poll that we ran on LinkedIn, and it's going to be put up in the chat room so that you all also feel it, and maybe now there'll be some bias. But the poll was around what's the biggest challenge that what women face in the workplace, and actually many of them said gender bias. I think 40% of the responses were gender bias, and they reminded me a conversation that we had with one of our mentors this past Saturday, and she told me she didn't grow up as a woman leader. There are people who grow up as a woman leader. There are people who grow up as just a leader. But she says she remembers the day she realized, I'm a woman leader. She was in a boardroom, and the instructions she was given was to go and make tea for somebody because she's the woman in that boardroom. And she realized, oh my God, I am not being seen here as a leader. I am being seen here as a woman. And she reminded me because when I worked in the bank, I used to report to the board, and we had the same conversation with the board chair, and I'll never forget. And she told me, Esther, you will never serve people tea. You will never take minutes in the meeting, not because I can't, but because there was a bias that was coming through in that whole task. And so I have a question for you. Have you always been a woman leader, or did you remember the moment where you recognized I'm a woman leader?
So I don't think of myself as a woman leader. I think of myself as a leader.
I can
I think
understand.
for me, that's where it begins. I'm not in a box called a woman leader. I am a leader. So I'm a leader irrespective of where I am. Have I always recognized it? No. But my upbringing, my dad has always brought me up to think differently, and upbringing is important.
Yes.
So my dad always said this to me growing up. If somebody has done it, you can do it. If nobody has done it, true story. If nobody has done it, you can be the first.
Can I just celebrate your dad?
Yes.
I have released that emoticon for you. Please celebrate. The thing, the reason I do that is I find the voice of fathers in women who go into leaders is often very loud.
So my dad's, upbringing was that you have therefore no excuse. Okay. And he has never made, I've never felt less than my brothers in any way in our home.
Wow. Love that.
We were all given the same opportunities and the same expectations.
Wow.
Okay.
Love that. Opportunities and expectations, especially the expectations.
Yes, they're the same. So going into any space, I have that in my mind. If there is somebody who has done it, I can do it. If there is no one who has done it, I'll be the first. So any leadership space I go into, how do I then, so that is one part of my life of how I was brought up. The second part is now through the different experiences, realizing that I can make a difference in any space I am in. Now, because I can make a difference, before I even recognize that I'm actually a leader, just the fact that I can make a difference already in itself was something. And anytime I would step into certain spaces, they would be like, wow, we love when you do this. Then it was the fact that when I entered many of my spaces throughout my schooling, I would be asked to lead one thing or another.
Wow.
As a result of that, I think then I came to at some point that actually I'm a leader. But remember now, I'm a leader who makes a difference in any space they go to.
Not just
Many
a leader,
people,
a leader who makes a difference.
who makes a difference. And there are people who recognize the leadership ability in me. And then thirdly, is that if there is somebody who has never done what you need to do, you can be the first. And if there's someone who has done it, you can do it
You can
also.
be the second.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my approach has always been that way.
Wow, love that. I love that totally. And I need to start to bring this to a close. I'm sure we won't even get through half of what we wanted to discuss, but I'm really loving this conversation. I'll ask 2 more questions and then we'll open these up. Please put up your takeaways, any questions that you may have in the chat room, and the team will compile them so that at least we spend 10 minutes. We're likely to finish at 9:10. Please allow us to just go 10 minutes overrun, and then by 9:10 I'll make a commitment to finish. But I have a question here, and I'm sure we won't go through all the questions. Trufi and I can have 5 hours and it still wouldn't finish. But I want to ask this one because I think it's important. What barriers do you still see women face in climbing leadership in corporate or faith-based or even governance spaces? What are some of the barriers that you're seeing?
Okay. So number one is what I would call, let me call it this way for the sake of this conversation, a self barrier. This emanates from the woman leader themselves. These are fears, these are mindsets, these are stories that as a leader as leaders, women leaders, we've told ourselves about our inability to do or to making a difference. And that is why I said self-leadership is very important. Self-barrier comes from the woman themselves. When you don't believe that you have the leadership capability or capacity, or even the leadership anointing, let me even use that term for the sake of those who are Christians. When you believe you can't make a difference, so when you have a lot of self-doubt, or when you have fear of failure, fear of what will people say to me, or when as a leader you're not developing and learning how to be more effective, all those are your own self barriers. And so in terms of barriers, I see it first from the leader themselves. Number two, others are culturally inclined stereotypes of what does a leader look like. I remember a comment I once had when I was pregnant with my third born, that how can we have a leader who is pregnant? It didn't make sense. So again, for that particular person, they could not understand how their leader can be pregnant. So I don't know how they are not compatible, but it's because in their mind, a leader,
Wow.
you see, okay, then you have the stereotypes of what does a leader look like.
Mm,
You have the biases. There'll be
mm,
someone biased about it, and so for me, those would be key barriers that would come. And then fear. I mean, even now, I still suffer from imposter syndrome. You will not believe it.
yeah.
And so on. So those are barriers, but
Mm,
the most difficult barrier and the most key that you must get rid of is the self barrier.
I can see that. I love that. And I like what you said. Sometimes as women, as men, as humans, we choose to be victims. It just somehow in our brains, it feels easier for me to be a victim. I think we put up in this poll, somebody put up a comment and they said sometimes when you're a mid-career person, you're not even interested in becoming a top senior person because the way you've seen senior people being harassed, you choose not to go to that level. And I get that choice. But I actually asked them, is that a choice that's made by reality or is it a choice that's made by half-baked truths? And I think that's what you're raising, that often we have a lot of half-baked truths that are holding us back. And I think the power of such communities, and we hold such spaces within Lapid extensively, whether it's within our flagship program or within the Crossroads program for mid-career professionals, the power of those spaces is you meet coaches, mentors, people who start to help you to see, is that really true? I remember recently we had one of our leaders talking about they're doing a lot of interviews for some executive role, and they found people have stuck. A lot of people get stuck in their career, and there are a lot of things to speak to that. You get stuck in one role not because you want to get stuck in one role. You get stuck in terms of growth. You're not growing. But part of it is also the stories that we've told ourselves about growth. You do not have to grow necessarily within your organizations only. There are very many opportunities for you to invest in yourself and to learn. It's the mindset that you have. And so choosing victimhood, the self barriers, the cultural barriers, the imposter syndrome, and asking, are each of these things serving me or are they enabling me to continue to be a victim? Is a question that's hard to sit with. And it's something that I would want to raise. And the last question that I have here is there are a lot of women who struggle with balancing leadership, family, and faith. I don't think it's ever possible to do a women's conversation and that doesn't come up. And so the question that I have here is how have you navigated these three critical aspects of your life? That's your family, that's your assignment as a leader, that's your assignment as a family person, and that's your faith as well. How do you navigate through those things?
Thanks. And by the way, Esther, I am a big believer in investing in yourself. I'm a big believer in personal development. So one of my roles right now, and I want to just throw that in, I know it wasn't in my profile, is I sit as a leader of what we call the Kingdom Connect. And the Kingdom Connect, we look at three things: increased income, increased impact, and increased influence. And the reason I bring that in is because I have chosen
increased impact,
increased income, increased influence, and increased income. And the reason I bring that in, and it's called the Kingdom Connect, you can search for it, is because we believe you must invest in yourself. So I love nice things. I buy for myself nice things. Because I love myself and I want to be an impactful leader, I must also buy for myself personal development.
Absolutely.
I wanted to just say that. And then let me go now to faith and balancing my roles. Number one, my faith is at the middle, is the center of my life.
Wow.
My faith informs everything else I do. So I look at everything from faith. What does my faith say concerning this area? What does my faith say about personal development? What does my faith say about my family? What does my faith say about my time? What does my faith say about my relationships? What does my faith say about wealth and finances? What does my faith say about helping other people? What does my faith say? My faith is at the middle. Everything else is around.
Wow. Love
So
that.
then, having sorted out faith, how then do I balance all the other areas? My personal, my belief, and this is something I teach women, is that life is in seasons. And you must live your life in your season. So one of the things I do, like with the mentees, and they will tell you, is I'll tell them, because I am in a different season from they are in a different, from the season they are in. They need to do things for their season. And I need to do things for my season.
Absolutely. So
There
it's not
might
like
be
they're trying to copying you or you copying them.
no. In fact, if you're copying me in everything, then we have a problem. Unless you're at exactly the same place of life as I am. So, for example, when people are going out for a hike and a picnic, I'm expecting a lot of my younger mentees to go, because that is where you go to mix and mingle. I'm also expecting you have time, more time than I do, for example. Yeah? Now, does it mean I can't go for a hike? I can, and I do. But
you should.
I probably, and I should, but I probably will be having different goals, or I may not do it as many times as I would like to, because my season is different. My children are now bigger, but when they were smaller, I didn't have time for many things. So I wouldn't have been there trying to do the same things of next week we have gone for a bridal shower, the next day we have gone for a party, the next day we've gone for a picnic. Oh, let's meet for coffee today. Hey, tomorrow lunch. Oh no, tomorrow we've gone to the salon. Cope, because my kids are small. Live life in your season.
I love that.
So I look at balance from a season perspective rather than a weight perspective. When you live life in that, when you live life in seasons, you attend to the most important thing in your season. Now, God is at the middle of my life. In terms of priority, my husband comes first, then my children. Okay? So, in any given season, those are the two people who call me out. Okay? But it also means that as seasons have come and have changed, they are also growing with me, and so can understand my changing seasons. So right now,
you're also changing.
Because I'm also changing. So right now, I'm not, my children know that I do a lot of webinars and talks. So nobody is coming around, oh, mommy this, mommy that. But it's also because they are older. But if they were younger, they would probably be looking for me, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but they can hear me and they're like, okay, mommy is in one of her meetings. But my season allows me to do what I'm doing without me dropping my key balls. My God, my marriage, and my children.
Oh, love that. I love the centeredness of that conversation. I think that what I encounter a lot is people trying to compare their seasons. And so trying to do the same things that Trufi is doing or Esther is doing. Your bigger job is to understand what season are you in. Make peace with your season. And do not underestimate anyone else's season or overestimate anyone else's season. Own the season that God has allowed you to be in. And in that season, ask, in the context of God is at the center, what is most important? And therefore then be able to build practices and things that you do around your family, around your leadership, around your faith on the basis of that. And I absolutely love that. I tell people, And the one thing that I found, and I'm sure now you're facing your winter, the one thing, every time I go to US, and I love to spend time there every so often, the thing that I like about them is they understand seasons very well, because their summer is very distinct from their winter. Their winter is very distinct from autumn and spring. Those autumn and spring may not be very distinct, but they're actually distinct. And I remember, for example, being in the middle of summer and starting to hear people saying, I need to buy jackets for winter. And so they're in summer, but they're thinking about how do I prepare for the next season, and yet making sure they have a lot of fun in their summer. And the reason I liked that analogy is because we tend to have one weather. So we live in that space of it's very hot, it's very cold. So I think sometimes we miss the understanding of seasons. But I think when you start to understand there's a season for it's hot, there's a season it's cold, there's a season you wear jackets, there's seasons where you buy jackets in the next season, you start to live in your current season and also ask God, how do I prepare for the next season in ways that enable you to be able to be fruitful, because that's still the instruction in whichever season. It's be fruitful in that season on the basis of whatever it is that God has entrusted you with. I don't want to ask any more questions. I want to hear from us. I hope that we are following the conversation. I hope that you're picking up things that are making sense for you. I have exactly 7 minutes to finish this. So kindly share with me, what are some things that are standing out for you? What are some questions you may have for Dr. Trufi and for myself? We're more than happy to be able to. I have decided the doctor is ChatGPT is not very far with this, Dr. Trufi. But let me just hear from 2-3 people. What are some comments you'd like to hear? What are some things that are standing out for you? And then what questions do you have? Yes, Edda, please go. And if there's any other question that has been put up in the chat room, Faith, kindly lift it for us. Edda, please go.
Good evening. My name is Eda, and thank you for this session. This is just a comment and a say. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I was in Dr. Trufi. I was in the Agnes course, program which Dr. Trufi was in charge. And it is funny that when I registered for this Zoom, I really did not know she was the host. And at 5 p.m., I had posted a LinkedIn tagging her on how impactful she was with the Agnes course. I want to really tell you that you're really doing a good work. And for us youngins, we are looking up to you. And there are things that you said that are stuck with us and stuck with me personally as a leader that I really love. And I appreciate the insights that you give everyone and the light that you give in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Edda. Oh, wonderful.
And I love the intention. Edda also wanted to celebrate you because of actually standing up and celebrating Trufi. I think often as leaders, you're on the move. And that's part of the reason why we're doing these awards, to make sure that also as people, we're just going back and saying thank you. So thank you, Edda, for speaking towards the things.
For you, Esther, when you've encouraged us to go an extra mile, I believe that's an extra mile I've just gone. So thank you, both of you.
Good job. I love that. Thank you so much, Edda. Let's hear from 2 more people. Any questions, any thoughts you would like to share with us? Please share with us what's standing out for you. I'd love to hear from 1 or 2 more people. What are you hearing? What's standing out for you? And then we start to close.
This is Tugus from Ethiopia.
Hi.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with the question and the answer. I'm more than excited. The most takeaway for today is making peace with the season, because we all struggle just doing this and that with different season. So we have to identify how to act on the specific particular season. Great, thank you so much.
I love that. Thank you, Tigist, for sharing that takeaway. And Karibu, my word Karibu means Welcome. It's nice to have Ethiopians here. If there are other people from other countries, please put it up in the chat room. And also want to celebrate Akose. Akose, let me just highlight this even as we wait for one more person to share their thoughts. Akose, please follow them up on social media. One of the team members can put a link within the chat room. They run the Africa, I don't know the full name, but it's the African Conference on Social Entrepreneurship. They bring together anybody who is running a social enterprise and are building a community that enables social enterprises to think about what impact they can have within the social economy. I am a big believer of the social economy. I tell people I signed up for a master's, an MBA very many years ago. I couldn't finish it. And the reason I couldn't finish it is I couldn't see the connection between the business course I was doing. I know some people find it. I personally couldn't find the connection between the business course I was doing and the society that I needed to serve. And so the reason I'm a huge fan of social entrepreneurship and social enterprises is it answers the question of how do you use businesses to make profit and yet serve the communities at an extensive way. And so Akose is a community you want to be able to make sure you follow. If you do, if you run a social enterprise, there's a conference that's going to be taking place in May that's bringing together many other social enterprise leaders to have conversations. We will have master classes, we'll have panels and conversations that are going to be elevating social entrepreneurship. So please be on the lookout for that. Follow their page and you'll be able to get information that you can use to sign up. So 2 people, we will only listen to these 2 people and then we will close. If there are any other questions, please put them up in the chat room and we'll find a way of sending you an email. Time is very much against us. But Mana, I'd love to hear from you. We'll get the comments from Mana and Bathsheba together and then we will listen to the closing remarks for Trufi as she answers any questions you may have.
Thank
Mana,
you so
go.
much. So though I am a bit late to enter, I got the points that really. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you well, Mana.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
I am the lover of Akose and I am a Tangasa alumni. Thank you for that and the leadership experiences and the wonders that you are doing as women. And I was really excited to hear from you. Hope to have another chance because tonight I missed some points, but I got some points that really will help me and continue transforming. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Mana. Thank you so much for logging in, Bathsheba. Bathsheba, do you have anything you want to add? Okay, Bathsheba, we can't hear you. I think there's a problem with your audio. As you fix that, perhaps, Trufi, your last thoughts on women who lead.
My last thoughts is that God has endowed every woman with leadership capacity and capability. And God is counting on you, like Esther, to take your place. Don't be silent. Go out and make a difference. Go out and serve. Go out and transform your society. Within you is the capacity to solve problems. Within you is the capacity to mend hearts. Within you is the capacity to build bridges. Within you is the capacity to birth big dreams. Go out and be the very best. And it is time for you as a woman to arise and take your place.
I absolutely believe everything that you've said, Trufi. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for logging in. Thank you for contributing. I see there's quite a bit of comments within the chat room. We appreciate each one of you. This month, we are holding several conversations with women who lead. We want to elevate the conversation of purpose-driven leadership. So please follow our pages. Be on the lookout for other conversations that we'll be hosting around women who lead. If you're a mid-career professional, professional, please make sure you check out Crossroads program. If you want to build your leadership skills and build some career clarity, that program is just for you. It has been an honor and a privilege to host each one of you. I'm going to be handing over back to Nicole to close, but thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this conversation. I will echo what Trufi said. It is our time. Let's arise and take space. Thank you very much, Nicole. Over back to you.
Wow, thank you so much for the session. I think if I add anything, I will be spoiling it. I've really been impacted by today's session, and I can only imagine what people in Crossroads and the Purpose Circle have are going to face, or are going to the impact they are going to feel. So thank you so much for today's session.
I'm hoping that Nicole is going to be praying for us before we close.
Yes, I'm going to be praying before we close. So as we know, time has been well spent. I don't know if Esther, you have any parting shots. Okay, so let's pray. Almighty Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the session that we've just had, oh Lord, for you are the one that purposed for us to be here at this time and point, oh Jehovah. King of glory, we've had some impactful words, which you also purpose for us to hear today. And we pray that you may help us to action them, oh Lord. We even commit every plan and everything that we've purposed to do unto your able hands, committing the Crossroads program and the Purpose Circle that is oncoming unto your able hands, oh Lord, as we pray that you may take preeminence and go before us. I pray even as we sleep, you may be with us and guide us and protect us. For it's in Jesus' name I do pray, believing and trusting.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for hosting us. Let's just release some emoji towards Nicole and the team that has put this together. Asanteni sana. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a very blessed night. And thank you, Nicole and the team. We honor and celebrate all of you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good night. Asanteni sana.
Night. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.